This is Mediterranean, California, brought to you by the seismic mole rats. Our natural disaster is earthquakes, and this is an earthquake-resistant building compared to a non-earthquake resistant building. There's a lot of diversity in the landscape of the ecoregion with a lot of hills, mountains, valleys, chaparrals, as well as islands. There's both grassy terrain as well as rocky terrain in the ecoregion. And the landscape allows for a lot of biodiversity. During winter months, the average temperature gets between 40 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, whereas in the summer, the temperature can be between 70 to 80 degrees. There's a primarily dry season from May to October, where it doesn't rain much, and then a wet season from November to April. And about half of the ecoregion's rain falls between January to March. Water is evaporated from the ocean, brought into the sky, where it falls onto the surface of the land and then brought back into the ocean. The soil is mostly sandy, but can also be made of silt, clay, or loam.
Some of the unique landforms to this region are the chaparral, the evergreen forest, mountains, valleys, and islands. Chaparral is an ecological community composed of shrubbery plants adapted to dry summers and moist winters that occurs especially in Southern California. Evergreen forests are commonly found in higher elevations of this region. Woodlands such as these are home to an extraordinary high number of native species. Mountains are a landmass that projects conspicuously above its surroundings and is higher than a hill. Valleys are a depression of the Earth's surface, usually between ranges of hills or mountains. Islands are a tract of land surrounded by water and smaller than a continent. Here's a picture of the geology of our region. Some of the wildlife include feral goats, mouflon, and wild boar, wild cattle, wild horses, geckos, vultures, and eagles.
We also have more wildlife such as the lynx and wild rabbits. We have mule deers, kangaroo rats, and roadrunners. We also have cougars, gray foxes, and coyotes. And then we can also delve into the plant life of the Mediterranean, such as kangaroo paws, lantanas, and Mexican bush sages, succulents, loropetalum, and lomandra. And then we have figs, rosemary, lavender. And then we have scarlet oaks, May apples, and golden Alexanders. There's a northern spice bush, a sweet bay magnolia, and butternut squashes. And just a place that basically surmises all of the characteristics of the Mediterranean, California, Pinnacles National Park. And then we also have threats that are introduced to the Mediterranean, such as population growth.
Climate change is also making this region uninhabitable for many of the species that live there, leading to a loss of biodiversity. Wildfires, made worse by climate change, also threaten both animals and plants in this region, and the wildfires are leading to high levels of carbon monoxide. Two main native groups that live in the area are the Chumash and the Tongu, who both live in grass huts along the coast. In terms of biomimicry, animals in the area are known to be able to sense earthquakes before they occur. The plants that live there, such as trees, have a cell wall that allows them to absorb pressure from the earthquake. And it is also important to study bones as they grow in a way to absorb and reduce stress from external forces. Here are some sounds from Mediterranean, California. Thank you for listening to our presentation about Mediterranean, California.
The Great Plains, Julia, Audrey, Hannah, and Eco, Level 1, Great. South Central Semi-Arid Prairie. Level 3, Central Plain. Level 1, Great Plains. This is the picture. Level 2, South Central Semi-Arid Prairies. The picture. And level 3, Central Plains. The picture.
The Great Plains is home to a variety of animals. They are very resilient when faced with the harsh seasons that come through the Great Plains. All the animals in the Great Plains are in the color range of neutral tones, so they can easily be camouflaged into the habitat whether or not they are prey or predator. The animals eat off the land and migrate to different locations once they need to find other grazing grounds, while others hunt the ones that eat off the land to complete the food chain of the Great Plains. When looking at the landscape of the Great Plains, there isn't much of a variety of different plants and not a lot of trees. Most of the land is covered in grass and a medium or long lane. It is not normal to find short grass in the Great Plains, but the native flowers add a bit of color and different sizes of plants. The native plants are typically in the colors of yellow, purple, blue, and true reds are very hard to find. There are only a couple different trees, but they are scattered around the landscape and very sparse.
The temperature of the Great Plains varies on the region quite drastically. Summers can be long and hot in the south, and winters are typically long and severe in the north of the Great Plains. Also, precipitation is also going to vary, and the Great Plains temperature is changing over time. There's also an aquifer in the middle of the Great Plains, and that is where the groundwater is coming from. The Ogallala Aquifer is actually a very large part of the Great Plains, and you can see in this graph how large it is compared to the Great Plains province. Most of the water is coming from the Rocky Mountain rivers and will come from that area. So some of the rivers, the Saskatchewan, the Red Deer. There's also a riparian in Montana where a lot of the streams will go into. Once again, here's the riparian in Montana. The decline of groundwater is a problem the Great Plains is facing. So you can see in this graph where the groundwater has been declining.
The indigenous tribes, the Kiowas, Apaches, the Arapahos, the Lakotas, the Cheyennes, the Arikara, the Pawnee, the Caddos, the Wichita, and the Hassidics. This is the pictures of the Caddos, the Hassidics, and the Wichita tribes. And this is two pictures of the Pawnee and Arikara tribes. The indigenous architecture, this is a picture of an earth lodge that was built by the Pawnee and Arikara tribes that made homes using the natural landfills. And this is the Caddos, the Hassidics, and the Wichita tribes. This is what they built, which is called the grass lodges. And they were part from the southern part of the plains. And this is where the plains meet the Rocky Mountains, and the Rocky Mountains helped form the creation of the plains.
So wildfires in the Great Plains can be intentional or unintentional depending on the situation. The Great Plains are one of the main regions where natural fires occur most. These fires depend on natural conditions, climate, and topography. Wildfires weren't always detrimental. Some of the benefits were that it reset the ecosystem, allowing it to grow back more diverse, and it also restricted different species to certain areas. Wildfires have become less frequent. Many people suppress wildfires because they thought it was detrimental to the environment. But this actually has an opposite effect because more woody vegetation has been growing back. Some of the characteristics of the grassy flat plains is agriculture, city development, and minerals. And these are being lost because of the woody vegetation that's been growing back. Many of the tribes that first started in the Great Plains, they were starting wildfires because they needed the protection to see over the land to see if any other tribes were coming for war. They also started wildfires to kill invasive species and to burn forest overgrowth. Recently, there has been a ban on intentional fires in certain areas because many people don't see the benefits of them. However, as we learned, wildfires have more benefits than harms because it keeps the land healthy and keeps it from being dysfunctional. These are our references.
Sources cited.
Good.
Alright, this is the Chihuahuan Desert. Here are just a couple pictures of different landscapes out there. So you got like deserts, more vegetation, as well as just pure sand deserts. Here's some more, just a little bit more grasslands and just more vegetation. And then it does actually snow in this desert, so there's a picture of it with snow on it, and then also just more of a sunset, more vegetation.
These are some desert color schemes. They range from blue to orange, red, and green. Some water resources. The main water source for humans living in the desert is the underground water aquifers and also the Rio Grande. And the Chihuahuan Desert has basin fill aquifers. The soil composition of this area, it's classified as a calcic horizon, which means that there is a lot of calcium carbonate in the soil.
These are some indigenous structures. So on the left, there's Mesa Verde, which is a cliff dwelling, and as well as the Pueblo multi-story home, which are still like used today.
This structure is a hogan, and it's created by the Navajo people. So Big Bend National Park is what protects this area of the Chihuahuan Desert, and it's a national park in West Texas. This is a topographical map of Big Bend National Park.
The topography, it has many different ones. It has mountain ranges, flat plains, along with great big ridges.
So farming became popular in Big Bend after the 1900s. And in this area, they could grow crops such as cotton and other food crops. And then once farming happened, they realized that mining was very popular in this area, and mercury was a mining resource.
So the vegetation in deserts range from like cactuses to little succulents to big tall cactuses. Then here we have the banana yucca, the toy bush, and the toy cactus, or the toy yucca. And then the living rock cactus, the hedgehog cactus, kucha cactus. And then as well as the rainbow cactus, and some more flowering plants like the desert candle and lava indigo bush. And here are just some more flowers, the desert lily, the stinging nettles, and the prickly pear cactus.
So wildlife consists of a variety of different reptiles as well as animals and assortment of birds. This is a Cape fox, is one of the animals. We also have different types of insects. So we have a slender-tailed scorpion, a vermilion flycatcher, and the coral gray banded king snake. Going into more reptiles, we have the green NL, red spotted toad, and the Lugo alligator lizard. Some more is the Trans-Pecos rat snake, the Gila monster, the coachwhip, and the Mohave rattlesnake. Some different animals is the ring-tailed cat, the bobcat, and white-tailed deer.
The writer of the Chihuahuan Desert has fascinating features. The average temperature is between 50 and 60 degrees. The annual rainfall totals from 6 to 20 inches, but most rainfall is from 7 inches. And major threats to extinction include erosion by humans, livestock grazing, and displacement of natural resources.
So landform consists of mainly hills, mountains, foot slopes, and flat grassy plains. The materials that it's made up of consists of limestone, sandstone, sand, and igneous strata.
One of the uplifts is the Chihuahua Desert has a large mountain range going throughout it. Fissures, it has a lot of fissures, which are like large cracks in the sediment where the sediment is dry and kind of splits open. The weathering and erosion over the years has caused mainly grassland. This has caused many of the soil and become loose due to lack of grassland to hold together. Geology. The Wild Desert has undergone many changes over its time, from once being a lush black grassland full of plants and trees to a more barren wasteland due to overgrazing and overpopulation of non-indigenous species of plants. The outcrops are rock formations that are visible to the eye. Nearly 80% of the region is covered in limestone beds. Metamorphic rocks that can be found are quartzite and marble.
And here's our work site.
Unit 4, Natural System of the Everglades. The topography in the Everglades is very low lying with very low relief. The section of the Everglades is very vast. Everglades National Park being the largest. In the Everglades, there's a lot more solution holes than sinkholes, which means the depression from gradually ground level goes lower. Karst is a landform that is affected by weathering, which is acidic rain. The strata layers in the bedrock, the Miami limestone is what is on the surface level, the topsoil, if you will. And the outcrops are calcite and quartz that are dominant in the south side of the lake. And igneous rock is also found in the Everglades.
The Everglades also has sedimentary rock, which is limestone made from calcium carbonate. Metamorphic rock is the third type that is typically talked about, but there is not a lot of metamorphic rock in this area. The soil composition is made up of two types of soil, marl and peat, but these two are opposites that can't coexist, so they're in two very opposite sides of the Everglade. Many places in Florida use geothermal energy for heating and cooling, which is good because this is clean energy. The Everglades has a very low elevation, which means that these rising sea levels that we are seeing threatens a bunch of different species. A lot of Florida is covered by a layer of sediments, some being as deep as 20 feet. The rain comes in two seasons, mostly from June to September, and then the dry season takes up the rest of the year, more in the winter months. Recently, there's been a lot of water flow to the Everglades, causing flooding. And there's a lot of riparian patterns that we see in the Everglades because these are areas between land and water, which is mostly what the Everglades is, as it is swampland.
The Biscayne Aquifer is what provides this area with most of the water. The water is naturally purified as it moves through it. In the Everglades, the average water depth is around 4 to 5 feet, and the deepest point's about 9. The windiest months are March, April, and November. But as we said earlier, the Everglades are split up into two seasons, the wet and the dry. The wet's usually from April to November. The summer wet season extends from April to November. It's usually in about the low 90s. And in the dry season, it's around the 50s to upper 70s. On average, there's about 263 sunny days in the year in the Everglades. There's 750 native seed-bearing plants in the Everglades, but a lot of them are endangered. Baby white-tailed deer and alligators have the best camouflage, and mango trees have adapted by growing winding roots that anchor it into the ground. The Everglades are made up of a lot of different plant diversity, but the biggest thing in common between all of them is their adaptations against water.
Some specific adaptations that animals have made in the Everglades are alligators have developed long claws, and frogs have developed gills. The plant community structure and growth varies in the Everglades. Swamps and marshes are largely different areas, but are both found in the Everglades. Root systems and branch patterns in the Everglades. Mangrove forests adapt to their biome by anchoring itself in the ground with winding roots. Specific sensitive aspects or threats to the ecoregion, urban sprawl, fire, agricultural development, things like that. Unique color palettes and patterns in the Everglades can be seen on this slide. So animals in the Everglades, starting with amphibians, there are many types of amphibians that live in the Everglades, from frogs and toads to salamanders and newts. There are many birds that also live in the area. A lot of frequently found birds in America, like ducks, geese, pigeons, and doves, hawks, and hummingbirds. But there are also wading birds, like flamingos. Fish. There are over 300 species of fish that live in the area. One specifically is the toadfish. Insects and spiders. While there has not been a thorough inventory, there is an estimated 5,000 types of insects and spiders in the area. For mammals, there are both land and water mammals. Some land mammals of note are bears and foxes, and some water mammals of note are being manatees and dolphins. A lot of reptiles also live in the area, from snakes and lizards to alligators and crocodiles and turtles. The food chain is very complex, with alligators and crocodiles being at the top. And these are our works cited.